Feels like a VIG. You know what I'm saying?
A what?
A VIG.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Basic AF, a mostly tech podcast. I'm Tom Anderson, and joined by my co-host and good buddy, Jeff Battersby. Good morning, Jeff.
Good buddy. Breaker.
10-4, good.
Good morning, Tom Anderson. How are you?
I'm doing very well, sir. How about yourself?
I don't know. A little pissed at you for not playing the music at the top of the show that I can hear, so I could dance a little bit and get the blood flowing.
I forgot again.
You ripped me off, dude.
Well.
You getting into a habit of us having guests and not having to play that. So,
Well, you get exactly what you pay for with me. So,
yeah, that's exactly right. It seems like less and less each time. More air in the bag than chips.
Shrinkflation, bro. Times are getting lean. All right, so this is episode 61, believe it or not. So show notes can be found at basicafshow.com/61.
Nice. And just as a reminder, you can get to us at feedback at basicafshow.com. We'd like you to do that. We do get emails from time to time. We're grateful for those. You can also contact us in the heart of your podcast listening app. There's a way to, if you look at the show notes, you can get to us that way as well. And since we're doing all this stuff at the top of the show, might as well remind you that our show music that Tom didn't play for me is Psychokinetics in Celsius 7. Always grateful to them for letting us use that tune that jives with our vibe. And then Randall Martin Design for the show artwork, 99.5% of the time or something like that, except for when Tom throws out stuff like last week's or last episode's artwork, which was pretty clever, I thought. So anyway, go get you some Psychokinetics and Randall Martin Design while you can.
Highly recommended you do that. So before we jump in to our topics today, which we have a few, want to make a quick plug for Joe Moyer.
Regrets, I have a few.
So Joe's a friend of ours. He's been on the show a couple of times so far. He is on Threads as the journaling guide, and he has just kicked off the journaling challenge, the 10-day journaling challenge. And I signed up for it. Of course, he's a big proponent of journaling and with all of the benefits that come along with that. And you can sign up for that at 24letters.net, 24letters.net. Each day you get a very simple prompt to give you something to think about for the day. Journal it however you see fit. Could be a simple little note on a sticky pad. Write it down, type it out. Even if you just think about it, I was telling Jeff before we started recording, I signed up for it. And on the third day, well, I'm not going to give it away. I'll tell you, I won't do any spoilers. Yeah. He sent one on the third day that was very relevant to what was going on that day and for me at work. And so I sent him a screenshot of it. And I was like, yeah, you're listening into my work conversations, Joe. Maybe I started a FaceTime and didn't know it.
But I will say one thing that's smart about this too is it's 10 days. It's not 30 days. It's not 90 days. It's
right, which is too much.
It can be overwhelming. So 10's a nice round number. You'll make it 10 days, Tom, I think.
I will.
You'll be able to do this.
Well, I love the simplicity of it. So if you're, when he was on, we had that journaling discussion, and still that's our most popular show. Yeah. Biggest numbers on downloads for that show. So if you haven't listened to that, go check that one out. But again, it's 24 letters, 24letters.net. So check that out.
Cool. Good idea.
Okay. So to kick things off, so last episode, so a couple of weeks ago as we record this on May 10th, we dug into our subscriptions and the number of them that we have, the types that we have, and discussed getting rid of some of them, which I have done to the tune of about $50 a month.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, not too bad. And I believe I mentioned it.
$600 a year.
Yeah. So not nothing. And I think I mentioned it briefly that I was looking at a new podcast app, Snipd. So I've had that now for a few more weeks.
Wait, didn't I have that when I had my vasectomy?
Oh, for Christ's sake.
Sorry, Tom.
I had a comment, but I'm just not even. Not even.
Sorry. Move on.
Move on. So anyway.
You won't forget the app, will you?
Something I'd like to forget, but not the app. So dear listener, 5 minutes in, we apologize.
Sorry. I've gone off the rails.
So, yeah.
I've ruined you for the rest of the podcast. That's great.
Yeah,
That's
thanks.
my job.
Appreciate that.
Okay. I'm sorry. I just couldn't help myself.
Well, we're always 12 in our chats back and forth, so it's real hard to behave ourselves on this.
I know. We're in real life. Okay. Let's talk about this fine app.
Let's talk about it, shall we? So I mentioned it to you this week. You downloaded it as well. So
I did.
Fool around with it a little bit. So why don't we start with what were your first impressions?
Okay, you want my first impression? $85 for a year of this. It's surprising. That's a pretty big number. I have not had the opportunity to play with the app much more than 2 days, and I have listened to several podcasts over those couple of days. So I give you some,
which is a fair
feedback on
assessment. It's $7 a month if you pay it annually, or $11.99 a month if you stick with the monthly.
So, which makes me curious. You did subscribe at that, nearly $100 mark, and I'm curious, and I'll feed back to you in a few seconds because my time with this app has not been as long as yours. But what compelled you to spend $85?
Okay, so this is the third time that I have gone back to this app.
Third time, wow.
Third time. So I did the trial, canceled both of those times. And so I went back to this one more time because when, a month or so ago, Craft, which is my writing / note-taking / PKMS system of choice, personal knowledge management system, if you're unfamiliar with that. If you're not a nerd like me and you're like, what the hell is PKMS? They did an integration with Readwise. Okay, so Readwise is the service that goes along with your book reading. So if you read on Kindle or Apple Books or use their reader app and mark up PDFs or send tweet threads or any pretty much, lots of different content. As you make those highlights in your reading app, it syncs with Readwise. And then you can go into Readwise and review the highlights, but they do a spaced repetition feature for that with their daily reviews. And so they'll send you an email each morning with a number of highlights from your books so that, a lot of times you'll read a book, you'll be like, that was good, interesting concepts in there. And then 2 months later, you're like, I can't remember anything from that book. And so what this does is it helps with reinforcing those highlights that you've taken from the book.
Okay, cool. Okay. Readwise does.
Readwise does.
Yes.
Yeah. Which separate subscription.
Right.
And so I saw Craft, they did that. So I looked into that a little bit. But then when I was looking at the Readwise site, I saw that they had an integration with this application, Snipd. And so as we start to talk about the features, it'll make more sense as to why. But that's a big part of it. And we'll unpack all that in the next few minutes.
Okay. So the idea behind this app, from what I could see, and again, my time with it, you didn't tell me you wanted to talk about this until I think Wednesday would have been.
So we plan at the last minute.
Right. We're right. Super weeks ahead on everything that we do here. That's why you get the best show possible. So I downloaded it and I listened to a couple podcasts. So I put on a couple episodes of Throughline, which is an NPR podcast that I really like that happens to be very information rich. Which I think is one of the benefits of this particular app. And the other one I did was Scene on Radio, SCENE on Radio, which is another one that is kind of history heavy. For example, Scene on Radio, some of their seasons, and they typically do one season of 9 or 10 episodes a year. In some cases, some of those seasons I have listened to and re-listened to 4 or 5 times. It's like college class. It's that dense in information dense. So I listened to a couple of those episodes, and what this app does from my perspective, having only spent a few minutes with it, is it listens along with you. And this is one aspect of it. Listens along with you, and when it hears information that it believes is pertinent to what it is that you're looking for, and you kind of do a little when you initially set it up, you do a little survey to say what are the kinds of things that you're listening to, why do you want to use this, and what kind of information do you want to collect. It will, as the name implies, snip little bits of information, collect that information, and kind of summarize it using AI. And then you can go back to it and tap those segments after reading the little brief, piece that it snipped out, and it will take you right to that section in the podcast, so you can hear what it is that you've taken notes on. So essentially, this is taking notes on what it is that you're listening to. So that is the benefit. I'm curious to know what it is about that particular feature, because I have thoughts. What it is about that particular feature that makes it valuable to you. What are you getting out of this? And I think I'm most curious to know how much and you're reusing, or you're going back through those snippets that it's taken of the podcast and listening to those sections, or reviewing whatever the text is. By the way, you can create your own snips as well. That was one of the things I wanted to add. You have the ability, while you're listening to a podcast, to tap a snips button, and this is whether or not you're driving in your car, because it has a CarPlay interface that you can tap, or you've got your phone in your pocket. I haven't looked to see if there's a watch app or not.
There is, yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
which I haven't used a lot, but I saw it on there for what it's worth.
So I'm curious to know what the upside is for you. Like I said, I usually go back and listen to podcasts again. I'm not usually writing notes or taking notes in that way. But what is the benefit you see, and how are you using the tens of millions of notes? You don't listen to as many podcasts as I do. I listen to podcasts.
And that's going to come up into what I'm getting from this too.
Okay, great. All right. I'm going to shut up.
Huh.
There's a silence. Wow, there was an eighth of a second of silence in the podcast.
Okay, so let's go back to that. You talked there a few minutes ago. So it will do the snip. So there's, when you go into the app and you look at your podcast, you can import your podcast from another app. So if you're using Podcast or Pocket Cast, which is what I was using, you can just export the list out. So PML, import it right in Snips. Your podcasts are all there. And it will show you, when you look at the episode list, if there are already snips made from other listeners in the community. It'll show you how many have been made. You can look at those if you want to. You don't have to necessarily even listen to the episode. You can browse the snips there and maybe see if you want to listen to it or not. And then, as you mentioned, you can create your own snips. And so the shows that I listen to, there are typically little tidbits in there on, it's either business stuff or productivity stuff or health and fitness stuff that I like, oh yeah, I should go back and look at that later and follow up on that and dig into that a little more. And it's either I forget because that's 8:30 in the morning and I'm driving to work, and then work happens and I don't know what I was doing at 8:30 in the morning driving to work. Or sometimes I'll set a reminder in, with Siri, with CarPlay, and just say, hey, remind me to look at such and such, which puts it in the reminders list, where it often just hangs out there and never gets anything done with it. It just kind of sits there. So that's kind of the first thing is, driving to work, I hear something, like I was listening to Chris Williamson episode of Modern Wisdom the other day that he did with Dave Ramsey, and I was like, oh, that was good. Bing, hit that. So I've got 32 snips from that show. And you can, in the app, and I don't, like I said, I've only had this for about a month. I don't think I will do this too often, but you can go into the show in the app. And when you look at it'll show you the transcript. It will give you quotes, but also there is a messages button right there that you can tap. And when you do that, you can chat with the app. So you can say, hey, somewhere in this episode, Chris said X, Y, Z. Remind me what he was talking about. And it'll search and show you that. So that's all good. I like that it flags the book. So if anybody is talking about a particular book in the episode, because Focused with David Sparks and Mike Schmidt is another episode or another show that I listen to, and they're oftentimes referred to books. And so it's nice that they just kind of show up there. And of course, a lot of times they put them in the show notes as well. But so, a lot of convenience there for those types of things. But I think where the real benefit is going to come from is in the Readwise integration. So all of those snips will end up in Readwise. And so over in Readwise, then I can go in, review them there, discard the ones that I think, well, it seemed interesting at the time, now don't care about it. I can do the reviews with Readwise. And so they've got themed reviews. So if I tag this stuff, I can say, maybe I just want, a review on AI topics, or maybe I just want a review on productivity stuff or health, whatever it is. And I can assign them to that. But what it's also doing as it goes into Readwise, it continues to build this collection of highlights. And so you end up with hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of highlights. And Readwise not too long ago introduced a chat with your highlights feature. So it's AI based. And so if you go over to Readwise and you go to chat, you can ask questions and it will return information from your highlights. So if I'm going back to maybe write about something in the newsletter, I can say, when did Apple first release Apple Intelligence and what critical components were there, blah, whatever the topic is, but it'll be based off the highlights. We'll take you directly to that particular highlight so you can reference it. And what I like about the Snipd highlights is, as you mentioned, it does give you a little AI overview. So it could be 2 bullet points or up to 5, I think it is. I've opted for the longer ones at this point. But it also throws in a chunk of the transcript as well to give you the context around it.
Okay, interesting. So it sounds like the biggest benefit you're getting from this is the fact that it's pulling it into an app that you use to review whatever content you're already working on, which is Readwise. And I can definitely see the benefit of that. For giggles, remind me, how much is a Readwise subscription?
Let me look. Hold on a second. I believe
let's do that
while
we're on
the
radio.
Right, yeah. Here we go. Pricing. Readwise Lite is $5.59 a month. The full Readwise is $9.99.
Okay. So you're talking $120 a year for Readwise plus the $85 or so bucks a year. So you're talking $200 a month. Are you getting that kind of benefit out of this?
I'm a month in, so I can't say yet.
Oh, Tom, come on, man. Extrapolate.
Something I suspect, yes, because here's something that I'm experimenting with. So, we've talked before, I can't listen to the number of podcasts that I used to because I'd listen in the car and my commute is short. And before I had 3 hours a day. Round trip commute, right? Hour and a half to work, hour and a half back. You can listen to a lot of podcasts in a week.
Yes, you can.
So what I have been experimenting with is the shows that I want to listen to, I put into the queue in Snipd, and then I let it run overnight on my iPad, and then it is auto-snipping the show.
Oh, interesting. So you're not really listening to these shows. Don't tell anybody to listen to Basic AF that they can do. You're not really listening to the show. You're actually using the app to extract pertinent information from the show and maybe going back and listening to those snips. Okay, interesting.
Right. So just the other day, I ran 4.5 hours of shows while I was asleep, and it just, snips them, dumps them into Readwise. And then, so this is where I haven't yet got a good solid process to go like, okay, so here's my Sunday review in Readwise to trim the fat, right? The stuff that I don't really care about. But so I'm using it kind of like an assistant to say, go listen to these shows, take down notes on anything you think is important, and then I'll skim it. And if I want to go back to it, I'll go back to it. Because otherwise I'm never going to be able to listen to it.
Yeah, I got you. That makes sense. And as you know, I listen to podcasts when I'm doing any and everything. If I'm cooking, I'm listening to a podcast. If I'm mowing the lawn, which, by the way, I walk 3 miles plus when I mow my lawn. I'm listening to a podcast. Yeah. So I'm doing that. Driving to and from. Work for me is now basically a walk, which I haven't had time to walk yet, but that will be, 15, 20 minute walk to work. But right now driving, it's 3 minutes, if that, to go to work. So, but my podcast listening, different than yours in that way. I guess the thing that's curious to me. So when I listen to stuff, like I said, I re-listen to Scene on Radio, some of those episodes, because they're so information dense. I ran one of those through. I listened to the podcast through using Snipd with one of those, and now I want to go back and review that, which I did not again have time to do before we got on here. But I'd be curious to see, compared to what I heard in those podcasts. And that's, by the way, when you're listening to the podcast, if it does, and I'm not sure, is it snipping something automatically, or maybe this is something somebody else has snipped, but it gives you a little tone to say, hey, we copied this. We've got a little snip right here for you.
Yeah, I think it does both, because I've run some stuff through that didn't have any existing snips, and it does. But I think if it's a more popular show that other people are, it will reference kind of and say, oh, this is a popular one that other users have done. Go ahead and tag that.
So what I'm curious to see, and I will continue using my free, I already unsubscribed from this, so I don't spend $85 like I did my $250 Economist subscription. Hilarious. What I want to do is I want to go back and see if the things that Snipd found were significant from the podcast I was listening to on its own, without me snipping something, matched or were significantly different from, or better or worse than what it is that I recall directly from the podcast. The thing about an algorithm, listening to things for you is, however that algorithm's been trained is going to determine what it finds significant, as opposed to what you maybe find has some synchronicity with yourself for what it is that you've been thinking about, which is my own internal algorithm. So anyway, I'm curious to see that, but again, haven't had the chance to do that. Have you done anything like that where you've gone back? You're feeding it through this. You're getting whatever Snipd is giving you. Have there been any podcasts that you've listened to actively, and then gone back to review the notes? And if so, what's it telling you? Like, is it matching what you're listening, what your thoughts were while you were listening?
Yeah. And I had that exact same question. Because going into it, I was like, okay, here's what I think I can do with it, which is to queue up the list of shows and let it run through those and process them. And will it give me good enough information, one, to be some of it be beneficial as it is, but also enough to maybe say, wow, that seems really good. I'm definitely going to go back and actually listen to that, and I'll listen to that the next time I mow the lawn. And so we took a trip up to Pennsylvania a few weeks ago, right before I signed up, and I listened to a couple of episodes of different podcasts. Cal Newport's was one, and I actually, we listened to it in the car. And so when
you made your kids listen to it. That's great. What a great dad you are.
Yeah. He's got his AirPods in. He doesn't care. It's no worse than, what do they call it? The kids call the old people yacht rock, dad rock, whatever they call it these days. Although they've started to say, some of that stuff's pretty good, Dad listens to. I've started to listen to it now. I'm like, yeah, how about that? I'm not that old. Well, I am. But so I did that to compare, and I didn't do any snips of the show while we were listening to it. And I was like, I'm just going to let it play and see what it grabs. and it did well enough that convinced me to say, okay, well, let's go ahead and try this out.
Okay. Good.
So I'm going to try for a year and see how it goes. And then if I don't stick with it for some reason, or I just find it's not being beneficial, but it's kind of like a time shifting experiment where I can't listen to 10 hours of podcasts a week. But if I can spend 20, 30 minutes with Readwise or something on a Sunday morning and get the benefit, and then maybe go back and find a couple gems that I do want to listen to, take that approach.
All right. I like that. That's a pretty slick idea. So I think, as is the case for me with Forever Notes, maybe in another month or so, we can revisit during an episode, both you with Snipd and me with Forever Notes, which I am continuing to use and use in different ways.
Nice.
Yeah, it's turned out to be a really great feature for me. Yeah, it's a good.
And maybe we can have Bill McLean come back on, because he and I've been emailing back and forth. He did a video on YouTube for Snipd, just as I think it was Snipd, or was it Readwise? May have been both. Just as I was going back for the third look at it. And he subscribed as well. So maybe share
cool.
notes.
Yeah, I'd like to have that conversation with you.
So I think he was kind of looking at it for the same types of things. Maybe not the queuing up, but definitely with some of the retention of the things that he's listening to. So it could be good.
All right. Excellent. So Bill, if you're listening, we hope you are. We'll get you on in a few weeks and have a little conversation about Forever Notes again and Snipd, very specifically about Forever Notes and Snipd.
Yep.
The vasectomy app.
So,
sorry.
So
home. All the stuff you can do at home these days.
I don't know if I do that at home or not. But to offset, Jeff, this new subscription, or a couple of subscriptions I just picked up, there has been a lawsuit settlement around Siri privacy that we might be able to recoup $1 or $2 from.
Yes. Did you get that? I got a little email about that it might have been listening. Well, I wasn't talking.
Yeah. Red flags go off when you get those emails. I always feel like they're scams.
Of course.
It's like,
class action suit that you're a part of if you want to be.
So well, let's see if any of the Apple sites pick this up, and if they do, then we'll know it's maybe true.
Yeah. No, I did get one of those emails, and I'll probably do something. And you know what? It's really kind of funny, and I find this more recently, and I think it's since I went to the no hay required for Siri. Mm-hmm. That if I'm watching something on, watching a movie or something like that, I always get that. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
I get that.
Or and it's it is listening. That's and at present, I'm trusting Apple. We'll see what the future holds. And I will tell you this also. This is bizarre. Just speaking of that, and then we can get back to the lawsuit. I was, had busy few weeks. Opened a bar in a restaurant, and then also opened actually the restaurant opened. So had that, and then opened a show last weekend. And I'm pretty toasty. Like my level of sleep has not been great. So I lay down on the couch yesterday before we had a show last evening, and I swear to you, I whispered to my watch, "Hey Siri, set a timer for 1 hour so I could nap." And my watch didn't hear it, but my HomePod did. It was pretty wild. So yeah, those things listen and can hear way better than you expect. And that's part of what this privacy suit is that it was catching information that it should not have been. And that started the listening process. And so this as you put here, the issue dates back to 2019 when it was revealed that Apple contractors heard recordings of private conversations by the company's customers. This happened when Siri was accidentally triggered by something a HomePod or other device thought was a Hey Siri command, but wasn't. Apple agreed to a $95 million settlement earlier this year, and now There's a website set up which will have this. I presume in the show notes that you can link to where you can register your claim. You have a valid claim if you suffered unintentional Siri activations during the time period listed. And
who hasn't?
It happens
Everybody.
at least once or twice a week. Still happens at least once or twice a week. So, this is definitely something to check out. And you have here that the last sentence is the kicker. I'll read the paragraph, and then you can do you can read the rest. Anyway, it says, as always, you shouldn't expect to get rich from this. The lawyers will, but you won't. The payout has been capped at $20 per Siri device. You can claim for up to 5 Siri devices for a maximum payout of $100. However,
which is pretty
you
good.
may receive less than this depending on the total number of claims. Yeah, $100 is pretty good. Most of the class action lawsuits stuff I get is like $5. So yeah, that's $100 would be a lot, and I have enough Apple devices that have responded in that way that I probably can get the full $100. But it also class action lawsuits also depend upon the number of people who are in the class. So if your class is huger than, which is not a word, huger than maybe it is, then 90. If it's 95 million people, then
enjoy your dollar.
Enjoy the dollar. This is exactly right. Have a nice dollar. Right. So, all right. Cool.
But the good news is most people are lazy and won't do that. So you might get $8.
Right. Instead of 100, but whatever. Takes a little effort to fill it all out.
So all of that for $95 million. Chump change in Cupertino.
Chump change in Cupertino is right. That's change
Show
spilling
title
on the
right
floor.
there.
Yeah. Which can have to do with some of the personnel changes they've been making to chump changes.
Well done. That's good. I like that one. That's good.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Speaking specifically.
We're covering multiple segments with one show title. This is good.
Apple AI. Anyway, nobody can hire me at Apple. Next up, Epic Games submits Fortnite to the U.S. App Store. I haven't followed this that much. I do not play Fortnite, but there was some battle between, I don't even know what it was. Was how Fortnite wanted to collect money and Apple wasn't going to let them do that?
Yeah, it got into that, and then Epic was being a little sketchy, and Apple ended up being a little sketchy, and so it was all these things to went to court. But it ended up, so a lot of it, courts sided with Apple on, some of it they didn't. But the big kind of thing that came out recently was that, where's that section? There we go. Apple now, before they wouldn't do this, and everyone is familiar with this, so if you went into the Kindle app on your iPhone and you wanted to get a book,
couldn't do it.
Well, you can't do that here. You've got to go over to a web browser and do that. And they couldn't even link to it, right? So, no, you can't do it. You got to go over. So the one thing that came out of this ruling in the courts was Apple is now required to allow developers to add links and buttons to their apps that direct customers to digital purchase options available outside of the App Store. So that's more convenient. I like that. Apple says, well, that's not very secure. And it's not very secure for their wallet is basically what it boils down to. And even, the kind of the bigger takeaway from that is if they do that, and why I say that's not as secure for their wallet is if they link out, so, like the Kindle app, which they've already put this in, Amazon has, if you link out in the Kindle app to go over to the Amazon store, Apple doesn't get a cut.
Right.
They're not allowed to collect a commission on that, which before they were. And so it was 27%. So it was not the usual 30 from the App Store, Jeff. They were generous and knocked it down to 27. And that's part of the things that came up in the court hearing, from what I understand, which I haven't followed this super closely either. So I looked at it a little bit this morning.
preparing as we usually do.
Right. And I've been listening to some stuff and reading for the last couple of weeks, but during some of, I guess, the testimony of the court hearings or whatever, Phil Schiller, used to be the head marketing person there at Apple when these conversations were happening. And so he testified and he said, quote, "I had great concerns about the collections of funds from developers." And he was specifically worried about the change in the role of the App Store to now an organization that needs to collect money from developers. And so he was, kind of concerned, like, this be more trouble than it's worth. What's it, anti-competitive type things. He was
feels like a VIG. You know what I'm saying?
A what?
A VIG. It's what the mafia does. When they come and say it'd be a shame if your building burned down,
right?
Maybe you should give us 30%,
right,
of whatever
pay us
you're
for protection, right?
Right. That's what it is in kinder terms.
And so he had his reservations, but the story from Mac Rumors, they said an Apple pricing committee. Things always go well when you have a committee, Jeff.
My favorite type of thing. I love boards and committees. Go ahead.
Yes. That included CEO Tim Cook, former CFO Luca Maestri, and Apple's legal team ultimately decided to implement the commission structure of 27%, which, by the way, that is the same Luca Maestri who a month ago, when Mark Gurman at Bloomberg was writing about those internal meetings at Apple about how poor Apple Intelligence has started off. Mm-hmm. Didn't want to budget for more GPUs so that they could do more. Instead, he said, why don't you guys just make that more efficient with what you have? So this guy's
good guy. Smart. Right.
Yeah.
He's a money dude.
Right.
Squeeze as much juice out of the apple as you can.
Right. And so this has led to even more discussions around the current state of Apple. So if you remember back when the AI stuff broke, when they were having, they did the changes, the organizational changes there, where they put the guy who was overseeing the Vision Pro project is now over top of Apple Intelligence, and Craig Federighi is more involved now. And sounds like they're making some good changes from what you can read from sources. And Gruber wrote that piece, "Something's Rotten in the State of Cupertino," and a bunch of other people chimed in. And things don't seem to be so great overall for Apple. Like, iPhone has been meh sales-wise. Apple Watch is down for the last 2 years, I think it is. But just in general, like Apple Intelligence, bleh, and then this on top of it. And so John Siracusa, who is one of the old Apple heads, has been around for ages, like
long
us,
time.
But
yeah,
used to do epic OS 10 reviews on our
were amazing.
Yeah, they were excellent. I mean, it must
miles long and very deep.
Yeah, and I think probably, I'm sure, inspired Federico Viticci with his reviews he would do for iPad OS and things. But he wrote a piece titled "Apple Turnover," which was good too.
Clever title.
Yeah, so we're all on fire here recently.
I guess.
Just a couple of quotes I thought that were interesting from this piece, which we will link to, of course. Time and time again, its policies have made its products worse for customers in exchange for more power, control, and yes, money for Apple. And then he kind of wraps it up at the end. In every healthy entity, whether it's an organization, an institution, or an organism, the old is replaced by the new. CEOs, sovereigns, or cells. It's time for new leadership at Apple.
Ooh, dang.
I was like, he didn't hold
Crack
back
that
on
whip.
that, did he?
Yeah, no, he didn't.
Which
Yeah, and it's interesting. And here's the thing. I'm not anti-capitalist, but man, I have a lot of side eye for capitalism. And part of the problem with capitalism is the need for constant monetary growth for stockholders. which can, I do think, that's why we end up with 40,000 different flavors of cereal, same stuff, but this time with pink moons or blue moons or green moons or whatever it is. In this need to always raise revenue, I think results in stagnation internally, because whatever it is that's getting done internally has to be, it has to have broader appeal than maybe was the case in the past. And, Steve Jobs was smart, and we can look at what he did. And I think one of the things that he did do was he tried to refine focus, for better or for worse, one button on an iPhone, or not one button, but, you had the home button, and that was kind of it, without a lot of other stuff. And I think that turns out to be a good thing. But I think it was Bauhaus, the designer, that he followed that aesthetic, which was to reduce things to their essence, the very smallest components that you needed to make something elegant and work well. And I think when money is the main emphasis, when profit, stockholder price, all that stuff becomes the main emphasis, then what happens at the level where that money's being made is you get spread out too thin, not enough focus. Apple Intelligence, if you're going to dive into the AI world, which obviously that's a thing, I think a little overblown still on all counts, no matter who it is. Everybody's got AI in their product these days, including Snipd. The thing that happens is you lose the ability to refine whatever it is that you're doing, to put good focus on it. And when you've got a guy, like you said, like Maestri, who's saying, do better with the junk you have, you end up losing the ability to do the best thing that you can do, to be smart about those things. So anyway, we'll see. That's a tough call by Syracuse. And he's flying the Apple flag upside down in that, that particular article, which is, interesting. We're in a state of disarray is what his opinion is. And we'll see. We'll see if we are. Apple's
I like to use the 6-color Apple logo too.
Yeah, I know.
Kind of throws you back the old beleaguered Apple days in the 90s.
Yeah, right.
Which
John Scully. Let's bring John. I don't think we are either. And there's billions of dollars that you can waste before you finally turn into something. But I think a more singular focus on product and what it is that you're designing. I think it's hard to innovate past the current iPhone iteration. We got a special button for taking pictures in the last phone. Okay, cool. It's not innovation. It's not something new and different. Rumors of the next iPhone are going to be super thin. Okay, great. Okay. I don't know. The Vision Pro.
What else do you have to say about that?
Yeah, and not much, because who cares? There's, and I think this goes back to the thing that when we were talking to Learreich, when you're designing things, whether it's user interfaces or things that you want to work with, there's a way of pushing a kind of innovation that the developer thinks the user needs, and then there's a way of developing something around what a user actually does need, and will fulfill some need, if you want to call it that. Whether or not anybody actually needs tech is a fair question, but Leah was really smart about that in that episode. We'd encourage you to go back and listen to it. Those things often get left to the wayside in service to, how are we going to make a better buck? So anyway, we'll see. Having lots of money and lots of things on the plate could make it
Well, I think
very
the challenge they're
unsatisfying.
running into with the phone, and all the other phone makers are running into the same thing, is it's very mature at this point. We're up to iPhone 16, 17 coming up in a few months. Samsung and the others, Google, they're all making good phones.
Yeah.
Very good phones. And, I think it's sometimes perspective. It's easy to lose that in regards of just how great the phones are right now.
Yeah.
Right? Because you go back and you see some of those things like, well, the phone replaced all of these things. And there's like a VCR, there's a TV, there's a camera, there's a phone, there's a recording studio, there's all these different things, which is all true, but it's been around for a while. And so there's only so much you can do with the phone form factor. So they go thinner, they go lighter, maybe a foldable, who knows? And I think everybody's kind of looking for what that next thing's going to be. I saw story 2, Apple's working on some chips, which isn't a surprise, but it was, one of the Mac rumor stories, custom chips for the glasses, not the Vision Pro, but just regular glasses, kind of like the Meta Ray-Bans. Google's working on that. They've got some new stuff with Gemini that people were excited about that's going to help drive those. And so I think that's kind of the out there. Who knows if that's going to materialize into anything? That's kind of to be determined. And so, I get it. It's, they killed the iPod for the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Something will come after the phone, but it's still unknown at this point what that is. But even if you look at laptops, like there's, performance-wise, yes, there's been a lot of innovation in laptops in the last, just with Apple Silicon, right? Not even going back 10 years. But, I did a post the other day where it's like, what was your first Mac? Here's mine. And it was a PowerBook 165C back in the 90s. But if you look at it, it's the same form factor. It's the clamshell, screens up top, keyboard. It had a trackball. We've got trackpads now. It has some ports to plug some stuff into.
Yeah.
So the form factor, you can only do so much with the form factors.
Correct.
And then the rest of it's, the guts of the machine and the software on top of it, which, they continue to make good strides there. But that also plays into some of these problems. It's that constant, people are like, well, what are you going to put new in the phone? You got to put something new in the phone. Users want new stuff. And so they do these OS releases every year that, I'm not going to lie, I enjoy. So,
yeah.
I was guilty as the next person, right? WWDC's coming up. We're going to talk about that, a bunch. And so it'd be hypocritical to, say that's a bad thing. But it brings challenges, though, because like you were just saying, well, we've got this other stuff we could go back to and improve that needs some work and spit and polish on it. But, well, I can't do that because now we need to put some new features into the calendar app or whatever it is for the next update. So it's tough. But they get paid a lot of money and they make a lot of money, and I'm sure they'll continue to push forward however they see fit.
Yeah, they should be able to figure something out. But that's an interesting call on Syracuse's part to say time to replace people.
Yeah, and they've had some turnover, and I think Tim Cook's been a good CEO overall. I mean, they've grown the company a lot. You can say, well, they haven't put out a bunch of new products, and it's like, well, no. I mean, Apple Watch, they say, was, I think, on the drawing board when Steve was still there. Mm-hmm. But Tim also had the struggle of following Steve. And so I think in that position, I think he's been there, I think, longer than Steve was at this point.
Yeah.
And I think he's done a good job. But
I agree. I don't think he has the same pizzazz that Steve Jobs did. He lacks that, and I think that unfortunately, no, nobody. You can't be another person, right? That doesn't.
But he has been there a long time, so maybe it is time.
Yes.
I mean, and I'm sure he's probably. I mean, he's not a super young guy either, so he's probably
ready to.
I'm sure they've got a succession plan and everything, and
of course,
and somebody will take it over, and we'll see what happens then once we're 2 CEOs on the other side of Steve. And it's hard.
It's hard. White smoke comes out of the chimney.
And they'll announce you as the new CEO.
Right.
And then I'll be sitting in this closet by myself.
I'd still come. I'd hang out with you, Tom.
Yeah, you tease me. But I'll be there. Yeah. Watch, he's still there. I'm not showing up.
Little fake.
All right, Jeff, take us home, sir.
All right. So this has been another 50 minutes that you've spent with us, and we appreciate it. As always, we're grateful that you come and listen. And if you listen this far, you're amazing. You're more than most. I don't even think Tom listens this far when he listens to the episodes as I hack out a lung. So thank you for coming to listen. Remember, like, subscribe, do whatever you do on your particular podcast app. We are growing, and we're grateful for that every single episode. So thank you. And I've already talked about artwork and all that jazz. So, Tom, you have a newsletter.
I do. TomFAnderson.com/newsletter.
Cool.
All right, great. So thanks again for being here. We will talk to you in a couple of weeks. Until then, take care.
See ya.
I don't wanna know about your imperfections, dude. Prefer to leave you on a pedestal so I'll improve. Cause if I'm finding out you know more, then I'm just like